Hi there everyone, welcome back to Sports Addict. I know what you're thinking, it's been a long time since you've seen my face. I know it has, it's been a couple of months since I've posted. I just felt the content I was posting wasn't quite what I wanted to be putting up, just recapping the week's scores. It was a bit boring, it wasn't particularly engaging. So I've decided to take a couple of months away and sort of evaluate what I want to be posting. And I've decided that I want to start posting stuff that I was posting on my blog, but in more of a spoken way, because I feel like yeah, alright, writing's okay, but I do like as well talking about football and getting my views more, not dramatised, but more spoken word rather than just written word. So anyway, yeah, so as you can see, just down below the title of this video is why United are in such disarray, and I'm just going to be talking about 3 points as to why I think United are in such have so many issues at the minute, and why they should be doing so much better. So the 3 points I'm going to talk about are going to be the owners, the players, and the managers as well. So it's not particularly going to be in that order, but you know, those are the three that I'm going to talk about. So the first one I'm going to talk about is the owners. So we're owned by the Glazer brothers, Glazer family, Avram and Joe, two Americans who own a successful American football team that have recently won the Super Bowl in the past few years. You know, they're millionaires. They bought United in a significant amount of debt, and although we're not in as much debt as we were, we are still in a significant amount of debt, and it just seems that, you know, they're not spending proportionately to what they're earning. Now I say this because United are the biggest club in the world in terms of fame and calibre, and I just think with that level of fame obviously brings income and money, and I just think with the amount of fame we've got, we should be spending a lot more. Now I know people are going to say that we brought in Ronaldo, Varane and Sancho in this past window of about 200 million, and 200 million is a lot of money, but then you look at the window before, we spent about 150. The window before that we didn't spend more than 100. The window before that we spent about 120, but that included buying Paul Pogba back from Juve. This season before that we didn't spend a lot. The season before that we didn't spend a lot. And we were bringing in players, but they weren't players that should be playing for Man United. They weren't players that were going to guarantee us the titles. They weren't players that were going to win us trophy after trophy and game after game. They were players that were going to do a job, but would they do a job for about 5 games, then have an off game, and then 5 maybe okay games, 1 world-class game, and then go back to being a bit You know, that has kind of replicated as well in the squad we've got at the minute with Freddie McTominay. You know, they have good games and bad games, but I'll get onto that in a few minutes. So yeah, they should be spending the amount we are spending every window. You know, you look at this summer, you've got Haaland going for basically nothing, about 80 million or maybe even less, because of his release clause that activates this window. And I think United will want him, but I think much with Sancho, Dortmund said that first window we were going for him, 120 million or you're not having him. And United just kept trying to bargain, and they're saying 120 million or you're not having him. And I mean, I know they got him for 70 million the next season, but last season we could have done with him. I think we'd have won that Europa League final with Sancho. I think we'd have done a hell of a lot better in the league. I don't think we'd have won it, but I don't think the gap would have been as big as it was. It was like 15, 16 points in the end. It wouldn't have been that big because, alright, Sancho's not been so good, but he kicks off in the second half of the season, like we've seen for Dortmund, like we saw for when he played Man City in the youth league. His first half of the season was bad, his second half was good, but again, I'll get onto that. So I just think the amount of money that United are bringing in, the Glazers should be spending a lot more. Not particularly just on players. I mean, you look at the stadium. We have got one of the most poorly run stadiums in English football. And I say this because we've been talking about renovation and building up the south stand up and over the train and tram lines on just next to the stadium. So we're building the stand. That stand is just one at the minute, and all the others are 2. So they've been saying they're going to build that one up and over. So you've got sort of a step, but you've got more, and you can increase the capacity by about 10,000 to increase it to 85,000 and make us an even bigger stadium. More money, more renovation. But they've been talking about this for about 6-7 years, and I mean, I know something that big, planning and preparation takes time, but it shouldn't take that long. I mean, Tottenham Hotspur, they spent 700 million around that figure, even went over budget for that new stadium they made at White Hart Lane, or whatever it's called now, Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. They went over budget, and they've got one of the best stadiums in world football, and they've got one of the highest capacities, and they fill it because they've got a big fan base, and they get more money, and they, making that, they've had that Amazon documentary which has included more sponsorships, it's more money, it's more income, they can buy better players, and it's a cycle of never-ending benefit if you do it right. And then you look at as well, we've got a rat problem, and that south stand they're talking about renovating is all covered in leaves and water, and it's sodden, and they would have to do a complete emptying of that south stand. They'd have to destroy that south stand and build it up just to do it again, when it should be just as simple as putting a new stand on the side. But then they've so poorly mismanaged this stadium and not given it the funds and care and attention it needs, and they've just propagated their own failures and just exacerbated it to a insurmountable level of that it's so bad. And just, you look at the American football that I was talking about a minute ago, they brought in Tom Brady from whichever team he was at before to whatever team the Glazers own. They won the Super Bowl that year. They've tried doing that with Ronaldo, but it's not as easy. It doesn't. American football, you can be a bit of a staggered team of maybe not so good players, but you can have a star player and still do really well. Whereas in football, you've got to have a team of really good players to do really good. It doesn't work the same. And even then, in the case of the American football team, Brady came into that team, and that team was already not as good as him, but they were a very good team. And you can bring in Ronaldo, who's on the same level as Tom Brady in terms of sporting ability. You can bring him in, but you can bring him in, but you've got to have the same level of players around him. You took him out of Juve, and Juve probably are a similar level to us in terms of structure and squad depth and things like that. But they're still better players. They've got Juan Cuadrado, you've got Paulo Dybala, one of the best number 10s in world football. You've got Wojciech Szczesny, you've got Chiellini, Matthias de Ligt, Bonucci, you've got Alexandro, and you had Gonzalo Higuain for a while. These are all world-class players. United just don't have those. And I think they need to work on bringing in some youngsters as well as that. But like I say, this is all some speculation and issues surrounding the squad that I'll get onto after I've talked about this next point, which is managers. Now, Sir Alex Ferguson was undeniably the best manager ever. You can say Zidane's it because he's won 4 Champions Leagues. You can say Pep is because of he's turned his squad around like that and turned them into instant winners. Klopp has done the same. But you just cannot deny that level of domination that Sir Alex had. He got us to 3 Champions League finals in 5-6 years. He got us dominating the league. No other team has won 3 league titles in a row. We're the only team to do that. We're one of the only teams to have won a domestic treble. There's not many. City are probably the only other team, maybe Chelsea as well, are the only teams to have done that. But then Sir Alex retired, and it probably was time for him to retire. You can't expect someone who's given over 20 years of his professional career, and he was approaching his 70s. He had his family, and he was getting a bit old, and it probably was time for him to retire. He could have carried on easily. He could have carried on and dominated for the rest of time, but it was probably time for him to move on, and I felt he deserved that, and we did as well give him the respect and dignity of going out while he was still on top. He won the league in his last season. But then you brought in David Moyes. Now, David Moyes was Sir Alex's first choice. No, sorry, that's my error. He was his second choice behind Pep Guardiola. But Guardiola obviously didn't understand what he was saying because he didn't speak much English at the time and thought he was offering him something else. But Sir Alex offered Guardiola the job, and Guardiola turned him down because he didn't know what he was asking. So he went with David Moyes, who was his second choice. Now David Moyes is doing well at West Ham at the minute, and he has done at like Everton before, and he went to Real Sociedad for a bit. But I just feel you give him the United manager job, I feel like he does better in underdog teams. West Ham are doing very well at the minute, and they're doing really well in the league. They're doing well in Europe, but they haven't got a world class team. They've got a few. Declan Rice is world class for me. I think Thomas Souček's got to be in that argument just purely for his defensive abilities. I think, Jared Bowen is very good. I don't think he's world class, but I think he's a very good right mid winger. I think Mikel Antonio is one of the best strikers in the league, and should he have stayed as an Englishman instead of moving to Jamaica, I think he would have been knocking on the door of Kane's replacement over Watkins or Calvert-Lewin. I easily think he would have been, but he opted for Jamaica, which is absolutely fine. But then we got rid of David Moyes after 6 months because he just simply was not producing the results he wanted to. Absolutely fine. We bring in Louis van Gaal now. Louis van Gaal's previously was working with, I think it was either Sunderland or Stoke, and then he did a lot of work with the Netherlands team, and he'd gone back there now doing work with the Netherlands team, and he did well for a few years. Brought in some signings. He brought in Juan Mata, Fellaini, those calibre of players, but again he didn't get the results that were needed of him. But you can argue it's with the backing. He didn't get the financial backing and the signings that he wanted, and he was left with part signings of players that were his second or maybe even third choice of what he wanted. And then we brought in Jose Mourinho, serial winner the world over, with Inter Milan. He won the Champions League with Porto. No one saw that coming. He managed Real Madrid. He managed Chelsea. Was a serial with he won 3 premierships for Chelsea, which his infamous line is 3 premierships for me, 1 for the rest of the managers in the league, which is a clip that's gone down in interview history. We brought in Jose Mourinho thinking he would be the answer, but I think at the time we had a lot of toxicity in the dressing room. We had Pogba, who was a massive name. We had Zlatan Ibrahimovic at the time, who was a massive name. We just brought in Alexis Sanchez, who'd done really well with Arsenal. We brought in a few other big names that were really big players that demanded, to be the star player. And you can have 4-star players, but it doesn't really work. You need to have that one star man and then really good players surrounding him. Now, when you've got 4 people all going for star man, it creates this level of toxicity and sort of jealousy in the dressing room of, oh, you should have passed me that, but I didn't want to give it to you because I wanted to score. Now, you can't have that. And I'll get onto the squad in a minute, but Jose Mourinho, I think, added to that because I think he had a lot of... He really, really believed into himself, and I think it got to a point of false modesty and cockiness, really, that he thought he was the best manager of all time. And there's definitely an argument about him being one of the best managers of all time. But I just think his attitude and his sort of his approach to being a manager didn't reflect that of Sir Alex. Sir Alex was a player's, like, almost, yes, he gave them a hairdryer treatment, but he was one of the best friends of the players. He cared about the players. He wanted them to do well. Jose Mourinho, if they had a crap game, just dropped him instead of giving him another chance to prove themselves and do well, which I think really, really doesn't work. Then they got rid of him and they brought in Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. He'd won the league with Molde, but that's like a team going to Bayern. That's like me going to Bayern Munich and winning the league. It's not a success, I mean, no disrespect to the German league or to Bayern, but any manager goes to Bayern and they'll win the league, just the pure dominance they have. They're such a good team. They could not have no manager and still win the league. They're that good. But yeah, so they brought in, and Ole Gunnar Solskjaer was never supposed to be manager for as long as he was. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer was supposed to be the Ralf Rangnick of the end of the Mourinho era. You know, we're supposed to bring in Ole for 6 months to the very most a year to get us to the winter window, or just to get us to because he came in the winter, and the plan was get us to the summer window and we'll get a permanent player in, and that's what we've done with Rangnick, and I'm so glad they haven't given Rangnick the job. Now Ole, they gave him a lot of backing and he wasn't producing the results he wanted to. Now I think this falls under the same thing, because we brought in Harry Maguire, who is not the centre-back we thought he was going to be. You know, we thought he'd come in and have that Virgil van Dijk impact, and he just didn't. You know, I'm not saying for any length of time that he's a bad centre-back, but he's not what we thought he was going to be. You know, he's slow, he makes a lot of mistakes. You know, if there's ever a team talk on the other team and they say we need to force a mistake, 99% of the time they're going to say go for Maguire, because that's their weak point. And if you can get him on the turn, or, you know, confuse him with your feet and get him all confused, you're going to have a run on goal, and then it's just you and De Gea. And De Gea's been superb this season. But again, I don't think Ole had enough experience. It's like Frank Lampard at Chelsea. He's an inexperienced manager that did well in a smaller club, tried coming to the big leagues and didn't do well. And I think him going to Everton, Frank Lampard, is the perfect move. You know, it's looking like that Everton are going to get relegated, and if they do, I do hope they don't sack Frank Lampard. I hope they give him a season in the Championship, let him come back up, and he gains that so valuable experience of coaching in a lower league, but also coaching a team that's fighting for something. You know, Everton, it seems at the minute they're only fighting to avoid relegation. You look at West Ham, they're fighting for Europe. You look at Leeds, they're fighting for the top half of the table. But I feel Everton only ever fight to survive, and I think fighting for the Championship title is going to be immense for what they can do. And I think if they can bring in a world-class manager like they've been talking about with Erik ten Hag from Ajax, who would probably use Donny van de Beek more, which I've always wanted to see. I thought Donny van de Beek I thought Paul Pogba was gonna go that year. We bought Donny, and I thought Donny was gonna be the Pogba replacement, but he just hasn't been. And I think, sorry, I'm not quite sure what happened there. The camera seemed to cut out. Anyways, I was saying, yeah, Donny having that chance at Everton is going to hopefully revitalise his career and get him some of that confidence with bringing in a new manager. Also looking at bringing in Mauricio Pochettino from Tottenham. Now, I don't particularly think Pochettino's the right choice. You know, he's not done as well with PSG as people hoped he would. He got Tottenham to a Champions League final, but he didn't play well in the final. You know, he bottled a one-horse race to the title and lost it to Leicester. I don't think he's the right choice. He could come in and prove me wrong, and I hope he does if he does come in. But I just don't think right now Mauricio Pochettino is the right choice. Next and final point really that I want to talk about is the players. Now, with the players, I think the issue is mostly the squad. And I think the issue with the squad is you've got 11 players that want to be that star man, and 11 players that can't be that star man. You know, I think there's a few players that you can't really place much blame on for the bad parts of this season. I don't think you can really place any blame on De Gea. De Gea's been up to the level and standard that he has been in those years where he won like 3 Golden Gloves in a row. I don't think you can really place much blame on Diogo Dalot or Telles. I think they've been excellent when they've played. I think they play well, and then he just goes back to Wan-Bissaka and Shaw because they're the players that have played most. I don't think you can place any blame on Sancho. And I don't think you can place much blame on the actual on-pitch performances at Ronaldo, because, you know, he got us out of the group stage. Without him, I don't think we'd have gotten out of that group stage of the Champions League. We'd be much lower down in the league without him. You know, that game against Spurs, he scored a hat-trick. We'd have lost 2-0 or maybe even worse without him. We might have scored 1 or 2, but we wouldn't have scored the goals that Ronaldo scored. But I think as well with Ronaldo brings the level of everyone wants to be as good as him and thinks they're as good as him, but then they're not as good as him. You know, Ronaldo is the best player at the minute for me in football. You know, you've got Haaland and Mbappe, but they're young. You've got Ronaldo who's 36, playing in the hardest league and the best league in the world, and he's producing insane numbers for what he is. I think if Mbappe came to the Prem right now, I don't think he will for a long, long time, if at all. But if he did come to the Prem, I think he would do a lot better than Ronaldo. But again, he's young, and I just think with the extenuating circumstances surrounding Ronaldo, there has to be a certain level of leeway of Ronaldo's done this and Ronaldo's done that. Anyway, so as well, I'm going to talk about Harry Maguire. I don't think he should be captain at all. I think he could have been captain if it had been given to him at a later point. We gave him the captaincy in a Europa League game where Ashley Young was not playing. I think he was injured. I think should have gone to De Gea or something. You know, someone who's been in the squad a lot longer, not someone who's just been in for less than 6 months. I think he's got I think every game he's got a mistake in him, and it's not always punished. But I think most games it is punished, and rightly so. You know, you can't be making the mistakes he's making and expect to get away with it game in, game out. I think Fred and McTominay are quite to blame. You know, Fred's, I think out of the two of them, has been the better of the midfielders. I think Fred and McTominay both share that pattern of they have one world-class game which justifies them getting picked for the next five, but the next five are either really bad games or just kind of, they're okay games. They're not games you're going to talk about afterwards. They're games where you just go, you know, they did all right. They did a few good things, but nothing amazing. And then the next game, they play really well, and that justifies them getting picked, which I think is not good enough. But, you know, Fred is producing more world-class performances than McTominay is. I think Bruno Fernandes has got an overinflated ego, and I think he came in, you know, he was loved by the fans within seconds. You know, they were singing his name at the Wolves Stadium that first game he played. They'd already made a song for him. The fans were begging for Bruno Fernandes, and when they brought him in, you know, it was supposedly the best thing to happen to us in a good few years, and it was, because he came in and had an instant impact, and he was, you know, he was playing to Kevin De Bruyne levels within 3 games and 4 games, and he was scoring most games, and he's still, since coming to United, he's got the most goals and assists for a midfielder, and his goals and assists per game are at elite standards, but I just think he likes to whinge, and he likes to have a moan at the ref. You know, if something doesn't go his way, or he misplaces a pass, or he's angry with a teammate, I think he's very quick to just sort of snap and retaliate, where I think he needs to be a bit more reserved and just, it seems as well at the minute, whenever we're losing, this is amplified, and I just think he needs to realise, yeah, we're losing, but we've got the quality to turn this around. And that he just needs to calm down and stop being frustrated at the lack of quality that the team's showing, and just keep doing what he knows what to do. If he keeps putting his passes into where he's putting them, and he keeps making these opportunities, eventually there's going to be a moment of quality. Or if he gets on the end of a goal scoring chance, he knows he's got this quality. But I just think once we start losing or going down in a game, his head just goes, and he loses all sense of what he should be doing, and he just focuses on every negative he possibly can. So anyway, that was my reasons as to why I think Man United are in such disarray. I think there's a lot that needs to be done surrounding United, and I think looking at Liverpool's model of bringing in sort of few world-class players every season, winning something, and then that attracts better players, winning something. And then as well, you don't stop. You know, the squad Liverpool have got is absolutely immense, but they brought in Konate to replace Joe Gomez and Joel Matip, who did well for Liverpool but were never the players they wanted them to be. They brought in Konate, they brought in Luis Diaz, because Mane had a bad season last season in terms of what Mane's not seasons are normally like. Now they brought him in not to replace Mane, but I think maybe to push Mane to keep going further. They brought in Diogo Jota, Firmino, who I don't think has produced nearly as many goals as Liverpool fans want him to. They brought in Jota, who can also play where Mane can play. Not as a replacement for Firmino, but to make Firmino better, you've got to bring in them. They brought in Telles, and that made Shaw better. I think then again with Shaw snuck in a bit of complacency of, oh, you know, I'm better than Telles, so I don't need to play as well, because they're not going to pick Telles. Now that's not going to work, and it hasn't worked under Rangnick because he's just given the games back to Tellez and he said, go out and show us what you can do. You know, City bring in Nathan Ake when they've already got John Stones, Aymeric Laporte. They did have Eric Garcia, now he's gone to Barcelona, but they brought in Nathan Ake to push them and make them better. They brought in Zinchenko and Walker and Cancelo to push Kyle Walker, and alright, Cancelo's played at the left a lot, but he's also displaced Kyle Walker in many situations. You need to bring in those players to make your other players better, and I think that's what United very much need to work on. And I think they also need to get a better manager that has a philosophy, not just Rangnick. Every team sheet is so vastly different, and alright, yeah, I get it. Playing some different players is a good idea, but when you're almost changing 7 out of the 11 or 8 out of the 11 every match, it becomes a major issue because you can't form a cohesive squad. It's just like when you watch a team playing the Prem and then a team playing the FA Cup with a weakened team. Those teams are so stark in contrast of quality, it's unreal. You could see that team haven't played together in a while. They still might get a result, but they haven't played together in a while, so there's lots more misplaced passes and lots of aggravation towards each other of you shouldn't be doing that. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, that's just my ideas. If you've got any ideas down below, please do still let me know. I'll probably link the blog if you want to go check that out. If you've got anything you want me to talk about, please do leave it in the comments down below, and I probably will get round to it. Enjoy, stay safe, stay positive, and stay happy.